Alrighty, so this video is specifically going to look at the weekly assignments of one of Brother Griffin's courses. Keep in mind that Brother Griffin has several courses, and so this video is meant to be recorded in a general sense. You should have already watched the general syllabus video, and I make reference to this video in that video. If you're coming here to watch this video is going to talk about essentially what you do every week, built around your weekly quizzes, which are due Saturdays at 11 p.m. There are going to be other videos talking about papers, smart projects, and Learning Suite itself that I'd recommend students to watch. But also, you should feel comfortable rewatching this video when you have more questions that come up. Just to repeat something that's been said in the general video, all weekly assignments in this class are due Saturday at 11 p.m. We don't change that, and we understand that sometimes things come up, so we provide a 2-day grace period until 11 p.m. on Monday night. We don't take off any points for students who submit their work during this grace period. However, we do not accept any late work after the grace period on Monday at 11 p.m. If you run into an issue and you're not going to be able to submit your work on time, you should let your TA know before the start of the grace period. That means let your TA know before 11 p.m. on Saturday night. Students should not plan on using the grace period to submit their work. You should only use the grace period when it comes up as something you want to check your work, that it was submitted correctly. You want to check to make sure that you submitted the right document, or you want to download your paper and make sure things are all ready for it to be turned in for your option. As for these assignments, we do not accept any late work, and TAs won't respond to students who email them during the grace period, especially because if you email a TA on Sunday, the TA doesn't work on Sunday. And if you email the TA on Monday, they have within 24 hours to respond to you. So you should not plan on reaching out to a TA during that time. Let us know of emergencies before 11 p.m. on Saturday, and we will work with you. We understand that sometimes there are things that we need to consider, but that happens before Saturday at 11 p.m. And if you're unsure if you're going to try and use the grace period, but you don't know if you might not have Wi-Fi, you should still let the TA know. You should hedge your bets or something like that and let the TA know. In the weekly quiz, you're going to be asked several questions. There's a video that I'm going to make that you should check out that has me walk through the Learning Suite for the course, and you'll actually see the questions there. Here, we're just going to be looking at what the questions ask and how to answer them. The first question you're going to get is your class attendance question. The first question is going to ask you, did you come to class? And that means showing up to class. If you showed up to class, you should give yourself those points, just right off the bat. The next question will ask you about your participation. This is where you rate yourself on, did you come on time? Did you leave early? Were you on your phone texting your friends, on your laptop texting your friends? Were you on social media? Were you working on other homework, sleeping? Essentially doing anything that isn't fully participating in the class. If you're there, present, and participating, you get the full 5 points. If you find yourself texting your friend during class, or if you find yourself watching something else or doing homework for another class, or just generally not paying attention, you should not get the full 5 points. Now, we're going to let you determine for yourself how many points. Maybe you only answered one text message, or maybe you spent the whole time watching Netflix. They're very different spectrum, and you should rate yourself appropriately. If you miss class, you need to get notes from other students. Every class will have material that's going to be on the midterm and final exam, and so getting those notes are going to be crucial to your success. However, you cannot make up class points simply by getting notes from another student. The only time we do let students make up attendance points is when they've spoken with the TA because they have a university excused absence. And we as TAs are happy to work with students who have those. If you don't, simply do not give yourself credits for attending class that day. Okay, the next thing is going to be your serious study goal. Now, in week 1 of the semester, you will set your serious study goal that for the rest of the semester you need to meet. There's two basic requirements of a serious study goal. There's a time requirement and then a serious aspect. Brother Griffin is trying to help students build effective habits of daily studying. On Learning Suite, there's going to be scripture study quotes under the Contents tab that you should read in prep for setting your goal. It's different prophets and apostles and other church leaders who have spoken on the importance of how to set serious study goals and what they should entail. You're going to be responsible for designing your own study parameters. You know yourself best. You know what an appropriate goal is to make it a reasonable amount of time and to make it serious. The time requirement does have a minimum, and that's a minimum of 15 minutes a day studying the scriptures we're covering in this course. Now notice how you can set a goal of above 15 minutes a day. We find that 30 minutes a day is a healthy amount, just because of what some prophets and apostles have said. But for this course, you only have to reach the minimum of 15 minutes a day. And you should spend that time reading the course material, the scriptures Brother Griffin is going to be covering. That's the pre-class reading that we discussed about in the schedule on the main syllabus. If you're spending a minimum of 15 minutes a day studying the scriptures from the course schedule, you should be able to cover all of that information. Then you need to do something to make it serious. This should not just be, I have to do my reading for the course. That means there needs to be a specific time and place, or there needs to be different ways of integrating a marking system or a journaling system where you can record your thoughts and impressions. Something where you're not just opening up your phone and reading a few verses off your phone. That wouldn't be serious study. Serious study would be a daily time where you go to a certain location with an effective marking system to focus on different points and then to integrate it into a journal. Something that you feel comfortable with that stretches you. And if you need to change your serious study expectations, maybe you set too high of a time or too many goals to make it serious, email the TA with your new goal. There's going to be, during the second week of the semester, a TA will go through your first weekly quiz and check to see that you meet these requirements when you submit your serious study goal. The first quiz will have a little text box where you can submit your goal. And then every other week for the rest of the semester, you'll simply mark how many days of the week you did meet your goal. Something you cannot do is you cannot read for 45 minutes on Wednesday and count that towards reading 15 minutes Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. That's not how that works. You have to be reading 15 minutes each day. And the quiz will ask you about how many days you met your goal. It's not about doing a large chunk, but a consistent daily study. If you have any questions about what should be an appropriate serious study goal, talk to your TA. If the TA, when checking your first quiz, finds that you did not set a reasonable amount of time, which has to be more than 15 minutes a day, or feels that your serious study really isn't serious study, but actually is more of checklist style studying, the TA will take away points from your first quiz and ask you to resubmit a serious study goal. I really want to quickly point out the concept of double dipping. Your goal for your serious study should be completely different from any other assignment in this class or another class. If your SMART project involves researching different attributes of Christ or different things that will have you be reading out of the scriptures, you cannot spend time studying for your SMART project and count that towards your serious study goal. Also, you cannot count any studying done for another course towards your serious study goal. This should be a unique Monday through Saturday, 5 days a week daily studying for this course. And then in the following weeks of the semester, you'll simply report how you meet your goal up to 6 days a week. Okay, next is your weekly reflection forum. Now this is important because with the weekly reflection forum, there's also a grade that the TA will randomly select. Brother Griffin is inviting you to follow some counsel we've received from different people on being the teacher yourselves. That means you're going to share one significant thing you learned or perhaps a question you had answered in this course. from class or from your studying. Understand, you need to be referencing scriptures we're covering in this course. If you're in a Book of Mormon class, you should not be quoting the Old Testament or the New Testament unless Brother Griffin has been using those in the course, and you need to make mention of that. What you share should come from the material you're covering in that class. That also means if it's General Conference week, you should not share a General Conference quote as your scripture unless you get approval from Brother Griffin. A lot of times students lose points on their digital dialogue random forum check because they do not use scripture from the course. So make sure you don't make that mistake. And you want to be exciting when you do this. When you report this into Learning Suite during your weekly quiz, you simply report if you wrote a forum entry and posted it into the Digital Dialogues tab on Learning Suite. You should see the other video explaining Learning Suite if you don't know where that is. And then you get 1 point for reading at least 3 other students' entries for that week. Twice during the semester, I'm going to randomly check which students did reach or did submit their goals. So what I do is I break down everyone's last name into different scheduled weeks. So maybe A, B, C, D, E, F will go to week 1, and then the rest of the alphabet will go to week 2. Now that doesn't really spread out the names well enough, and that's kind of an easy pattern, so we wouldn't do that. But the concept is we're going to be randomly checking to make sure that students are submitting their work. If the TA checks and finds that you did not submit your work, but then you gave yourself points in the weekly quiz, we're going to take away those points and then reach out to you and ask you what occurred and why you felt you deserved points for not doing work. We may periodically check. When we do the random form check, there is a score out of 20 points that's broken down here. You get 6 points for identifying your scripture passage and briefly explaining what it means to you. That's a little bit more than just saying, I'm going to use 1 Nephi 1:1. Here's what it says. It means a lot to me because I've read it a lot. You should create something authentic, interesting, something personal, meaningful, thought-provoking. And then you share one principle or doctrine you gained from that scripture. If you're not sharing a scripture, then there's no principle or doctrine you can share. So make sure you do that first thing because the second thing will build upon that. When you explain your principle of doctrine, you should be giving detail, some interest, something where people you're sending it to, whether that be a friend, if you're posting it on Facebook, you're emailing it to family. It should be something that you have gained from that scripture, and then you get the net 6 points or a spectrum of that for how well you apply that to you and or your potential audience. And then there's just simple mechanic quality, so make sure the spelling, grammar, and punctuation is correct. We talk about here how these posts should be exciting, interesting, something that's authentic, not just like a rote robot writing down very brief answers to these questions. If we find entries that really only have a few sentences for each of these things, they're going to lose some points. It looks like they're going to receive less than 5 out of 20, so watch out for that. If you skip a week, you do not get points. So if you're out of town and you're not going to give yourself attendance points, you should still be doing your digital dialogues. There is a one-time exception where if you miss a weekly quiz because you forgot to submit it, you can email the TA a copy of your missed digital dialogue with the week as the subject so the TA knows which week it's using for. Now, that does not mean you get points in your quiz. So if you submit your quiz and you give yourself full credit for doing a digital dialogue, but then you didn't submit a digital dialogue and you try and email the TA a copy of it, that doesn't work and you'd lose those points. But it's really important to make sure that if you do miss a week, you email the TA for your one-time exception because we do randomly check, and that way you won't lose a full 20 points for not having something submitted. If the TA from just scrolling through sees that certain students did not submit something and then goes to their quiz and sees that they they did give themselves points, the TA will reach out to that student and ask them some questions to figure out the situation. They won't get a 0 on the random form check because it wouldn't be the random form check, but it would still be something that the TA would see for the quiz points. There is on the Contents tab of Learning Suite a good and bad examples of digital dialogues from past semesters. You should become familiar with that and see what we're expecting with that type of post. A lot of times students just get comfortable around week 5 and 6 and shorten their posts or start to make them more mechanical. Make sure you don't fall into that trap. That's where students lose a lot of points. Okay, and then your SMART project. In your quiz, you're going to be reporting if you worked on your SMART project. Now, for the first week of the semester, you actually submit your goal for your SMART project. And we're going to have an entire video built around what that goal should entail. But every other week, you give yourself 1 point for every 15 minutes you spend on your SMART project, because you should be working on them for at least an hour a week, creating something tangible in the process. This, unlike the daily scripture goal where you have to do that every day, you can do a full hour of your SMART project in one day. You don't have to spread that out over multiple days. Just make sure you're completing all your work before Saturday at 11 p.m. and you'll go ahead and get points for that. And see the SMART project video for more information about that. If you have any questions about your weekly assignments, feel comfortable emailing the TA. I didn't read through this, and this syllabus might not be the one for your course because he might have changed it for specific courses. Make sure you've read those carefully and are comfortable with what they talk about. Students are held accountable for this information, and there's nothing worse than at the end of the semester asking the TA something and the TA saying, I'm not able to make any changes to that because that was answered in the syllabus and students were expected to know it. Okay, I wish you the best.